You're watching the news from Kazakhstan. I'm Max Bagishov, and these are the stories making today's headlines. The new trial of Shetpe disorders last December opened with a scandal. The defendants refused to take part in the hearing, as some of them do not even have attorneys. The April 28 dissent rally will be held under the slogan of "Enough." The opposition and public activists called the population to support the protest. Atrao authorities are looking for street cleaners who use the national flag to remove rubbish, while the country's sports officials intend to test the athletes' knowledge of the state anthem. A new trial is launched in Aktavis. The city court is reviewing the criminal case of Shetpe station riots. Families of defendants and dozens of observers already expressed their doubts about the fairness of the trial, and indeed several procedural violations have been reported already.
12 defendants in the notorious case of mass riots in Shetpe station refused to take part in the trial. The very first hearing revealed that two of the defendants don't have attorneys. One is on business trip and the other participates in a similar trial over Zhanozyan unrests. Several new attorneys of their defendants are not yet familiar with all case materials. That's why attorneys asked to postpone the hearing, but the judge rejected the motion and went ahead after a break. The defendants voiced their protest against his decision and refused to participate in the proceedings. Some of the articles of the criminal code state that if the defendants refuse to participate in the process, the hearing may continue without them. We will not take recess and continue proceedings. Those who do not participate in hearings will be timely informed about everything. Observers on behalf of opposition believe this episode to be a judicial paradox. Marjana Spandiarova, an SDP member, even called it blatant injustice, since the right for defense is the fundamental principle of any constitutional state. Defendants probably are not aware of legal practices to the full extent. However, they understand that this trial will determine their fate. Thus, they had no other way but voice protest and waive this so-called hearing. Continuing the hearing without observers, families and friends of the defendants is a violation of the part of the judge. All these people wanted to see a fair trial, but we already see bias. Any professional judge, even with a minimum of legal knowledge, would have withdrawn from the case. Another petition of the attorneys for permits to audio and video recordings of the proceedings was granted partially. At first it was permitted to film only for 5 minutes, and then reporters will have to be relocated to a specially equipped room, just like the one set up in the Zhanozyan trial. The quality of video and audio there leaves much to be desired. If a permission was granted for a filming of a trial for 2 cameras, why not for the others? If a cameraman is not interfering with a hearing, why can't he film it? On Tuesday, one of the opposition members, Jarmakhan Tuyakbay, an SDP co-chairman, attended Shetpe trial. The ex-chief prosecutor believes that per Kazakhstan's legislation, defense has less rights than anyone else in the legal order. That is the reason for judicial collisions, when the judge can give no chance to the defendant because their attorney is absent for one reason or another. Our current criminal legislation allows hearing and convicting defendants even without their presence. It seems that the main purpose is to close cases as quickly as possible and prove it was all fair and honest. Why the hurry? The judge may continue the trial for several years. There should be no rush. Does he need to report about the closed trial to his superiors? We've seen it all before. 12 people are on the dock in the case over Shetpe riots, which took place the next day after Zhanozyan unrest. All of the defendants are residents of Shetpe railway station area. Young people are charged with deliberate damage of transportation and communication lines, mass riots, and the use of force against public authority.
Disorders at Shetpe station in the Mangistar region began on December 17, 2011, when local residents blocked the rail traffic, demanding to stop the bloodshed in Zhanozyan and asking to withdraw internal forces from the town.
As was reported by the General Prosecution Office, around 50 hooligans have set the New Year tree and a rail engine on fire, threw Molotov cocktails at nearby cars, broke shop windows and damaged vehicles. Officially, while trying to stop the criminals, policemen were attacked with Molotovs and stones, which prompted them to use firearms. As a result, 1 man was killed and 11 others injured. The killed Torebek Toligenov was an MES sergeant who came to the station on the order to stop the riots.
Questioning of defendants continued on Tuesday at the Zhanozyan trial. Their testimonies included numerous reports of police brutality and tortures used during the pre-trial investigation.
Defendant Janat Murembayev said that he had been beaten right after his detention in Main Department of Internal Affairs and was later brought to the prosecutor's office. There, Murembayev was shown a picture of a man he never met and was forced to testify against him. Investigator Kaldubay Awezov beat him after Murembayev refused. According to the defendant, several other men wearing masks joined the investigator. Another defendant, Serik Akzhigatov, also spoke about beating and revealed that he was forced to sign some papers. Akzhigatov still doesn't know what he signed since he doesn't speak Kazakh well, and a translator was never present to assist him. Defendant Parahat Dusimbayev said that his testimony was virtually beaten out of him, while the head of the temporary detention facility was present and witnessed the brutality. Most of all, I was irritated by the fact that we didn't kill anyone and were still in the cell, while the ones with blood on their hands were right there in the courtroom, especially people like Multikov. I personally heard him saying "open fire" on my command. Now they're saying that they were shooting in the air and ground. This is a lie. Many people were killed there. Where did they come from? Ulukbek Multikov is the head of the Committee for Public Order of the Mangistau Regional Internal Affairs Department. He is considered a victim in the case of mass riots in Zhanaozen on December 16th. On April 5th, he was called for questioning. The police officer admitted he opened fire on December 16. However, he declined to comment on the motive of his actions. I didn't order shoot to kill. Don't you remember? I went with my raised hands saying, "Don't shoot people, look at me, don't you recognize me?" Talking about tortures again, for several days now, Parahat Dusimbayev recalled that on December 16, when he came back home after helping to transport the injured to the hospital, he fainted because he was also wounded. His sister was wounded as well, while his father was killed the same day, and his mother went looking for him and found him in the morgue. Then he was detained and taken to the police department and later tortured in the prosecution office. So this was done not only by investigators but also by the prosecution officers.
Internal Affairs Minister Kalmuhammed Kasymov, who led the investigation team in Zhanaozen and then on December 18 said he was ready to use firearms in Aktau if situation demands it, confirmed the recent initiative of the authorities to step up punishment for dropping gum on the sidewalk.
Initially, the gum issue was raised a week ago during the conference on Astana development. Nursultan Nazarbayev personally requested the law enforcement to punish citizens for minor offenses. In particular, everyone spotted dropping a gum on the sidewalk should be arrested and then placed for 3 days behind the bars. Some people supported the president's drastic measures, while others were skeptical, saying that more serious and pressing crimes should be addressed first. The head of the country's police shared his view on the issue. If the administration code calls for a punishment, we'll draw up a protocol and the court will need to address the case. Now, regarding the punishment, the court will decide whether it will be a fine or an administrative arrest. Now people are afraid that we'll start planting gums on them just like drugs. But how can gum be planted on a person? I don't think it can be done.
The report on the human rights situation in Kazakhstan, prepared for the European Union, will be presented without public activists Janbolat Mamay and Bolat Atabayev. Last Friday, they have submitted petitions to the investigators asking for a permission to leave the country to take part in Brussels and Warsaw parliamentary sessions. Although their official answer is yet to arrive, both oppositions already know their petitions have been rejected.
This was not the official response. The official one will be voiced later this week, but we already know what the official response will be like. We contacted Nurlan Baldairov, the head of the investigation, and he told me and to Bolat Atabayev that we were not allowed to leave the country under the recognizance not to leave. Janbolat Mamay and Bolat Atabayev are facing charges of instigating social hatred. Therefore, they have no right to leave the city without investigators' permission. The authorities have backed up the decision with the fact that the international meetings will put the pressure on the investigation. Following recently adopted resolution on Kazakhstan by the European Parliament, the opposition leaders were invited to speak to the MEPs and tell them about the policies pursued by the country's authorities.
On Tuesday, reporters learned some details about the closed investigation launched against politician Vladimir Kozlov and public activist Serit Sapargali, whose arrest has been extended just recently. The real motivation behind the extension were revealed by an anonymous source in a message sent to the website Respublika.
Another piece of secret information was leaked to the press. An anonymous source revealed that the opposition should prepare for the special services to accuse the Alga party leader Vladimir Kozlov of all imaginable sins and vices. According to the leader of the Respublika portal, the NSC is allegedly conditioning people to testify as witnesses against the opposition member. The anonymous source states the investigation authorities are planning to use this testimony to accuse the politician of incitement of social hatred and coordination of riots during the December mass disorders in Zhanaozen. Third, so far the investigators of the National Security Committee cannot even come up with charges against Vladimir Kozlov sound enough not to fall apart during the trial, as is happening right now in Aktau during the hearing over mass riots in Zhanaozen. That is why the president's administration wants to hold the trials over the incitement of social hatred against Kozlov, Sapargali and others at exactly the same time with the trial over the alleged terrorist attacks in Almaty. The version brought by the informed reader certainly has a right to exist, as on Monday the court approved NSC's petition and extended the arrest for the Alga leader and public activist Serik Sapargali by another month. The judiciary always stands to meet the needs of the special service agencies, says the independent lawyer Lyudmila Kozlova. Within her knowledge, the judge affirmed the attorney's motion only once, when the persons involved in the case of Alliance Bank agreed to cooperate with the investigation, which resulted in changing their level of restraint. At the same time, the expert says the court may not extend the retention period more than 5 times. In case the investigation has not been completed within 2 months, the retention period is extended for 3, 6, 9 months and up to 1 year in case of especially grave crimes. Further extension is forbidden by law. The Criminal Code article on the incitement of social hatred classifies the crime as a grave one. However, Kozlov's associates believe the court's motivations are far from legally based. Thus, the investigation process will be extended as much as possible. The primary goal is isolating Kozlov and Sapargali from general public, friends, family, our organization, as well as political and social activity, because people like Kozlov stand in the way of authorities and prove to be stronger, and they are getting stronger, thus becoming real political opponents to the current government. According to the reader of the Respublika newspaper, the order to banish opposition and independent media allegedly came from the national leader himself. That is why it looks like the operation involves all state bodies, including the National Security Committee, President's administration, Prosecutor General's office and the Ministry of Justice.
On Tuesday, the Specialized Inter-District Criminal Court of Zhambul region opened the preliminary hearing on the so-called Kurmashin case. The activist lawyers immediately submitted several petitions asking to send the case back to further investigation, since the poor prosecution work gives ground for the requalification of the entire case. Additionally, Kurmashin's attorney Iskender Alimbayev requested to change the level of restriction for his client, who is charged with extortion of 25,000 from a prosecution office employee.
The defense requested to withdraw the expert reports made with violations, some of them failing to meet the requirements. An example to illustrate is the expert report of Vadim Kuramshin's conversation with the prosecutor Udirbayev. The expert report on the conversation was not made by linguists or other language specialists, but by Orientalists of all people. Judge Samat Ulizbayev rejected all motions as he didn't find any reasons for further case investigation. The prosecution said that all violations will be eliminated during the course of legal proceedings. The members of the jury are now being selected and the main hearings are scheduled for May 2nd. Kuramshin is spending his 3rd month in the detention facility in Taras.
Almaty hosted a conference on Tuesday attended by representatives of public organizations who believe the lawlessness of their government has already penetrated all aspects of everyday life in Kazakhstan. Their discontent will be expressed during the upcoming Dissenters' Day.
We have peaceful intentions. It will be better if they allow us to do this, because they can't stop us. We will come anyway. We won't pass up an opportunity to have our problems heard by the government. Thus, if we want to live in a civilized state governed by the rule of law and taking into account the international conventions on the freedom of assembly signed by Kazakhstan, the meeting definitely must be permitted. Enough is the slogan for the upcoming protest scheduled for April 28th, which will take place next to the Abay Monument in Almaty. According to activists, this is going to be a peaceful gathering. They appeal to the public for supporting the action. Some of them assume they'll spend the day in a police department afterwards, as it usually happens. This, however, doesn't put them off. The public activists look very determined. According to the entrepreneur Kanagat Takeyeva, the boiling point was reached during the tragedy in Western Kazakhstan on December 16 last year. Events in Zhanaozen acted as a fillip for formation of dissent groups. That was the ignition point. As we witnessed this kind of execution, we knew the government went over the line.
The controversy surrounding short video The Octopus showing the corruption of rural authorities of the Pavlodar region is still escalating. Mikhail Barsukovsky, the author of the video, now faces several civil lawsuits, including from the head of the Sherbakty district administration, Sapargeldi Smagulov.
I will sue him. I have already filed a lawsuit. After all, I am the administration head and I represent the president here locally. 2 months ago, a short film, The Octopus, was uploaded to the internet in which corruption and tyranny accusations were made against local state officials and law enforcement representatives. When the video appeared on the mainstream media, some of its characters decided to sue the author, the 57-year-old Mikhail Barsukovsky. The businessman is confident, though, that he did the right thing and says this way officials are trying to put pressure on him. Barsukovsky had already appealed to President Nazarbayev asking for assistance and placed his statement on YouTube. Today the process is going in the reverse. Instead of persecuting people involved in corruption, they are punishing people like me. Those who we complain about are now pressuring us.
Agriculture Minister Asyljan Mamutbekov agreed with the President's criticism of the department expressed early in the year. Nursultan Nazarbayev said the minister is a leader in corruption offenses, and during yesterday's briefing in Astana, the minister pinpointed most of the problems on the veterinary medicine.
Asyljan Mamutbekov noted that the problems occurred due to the corruption. As a result, no one was brought accountable for the worsening of the epizootic situation after vaccines purchased last year didn't bring desired effect. Another issue is to do with the number of cattle. The agriculture minister said that a big disparity in statistics was revealed after the introduction of animal chips. During labeling the cattle, it appeared we're missing 12% of the animals. The numbers came as 5 million instead of 6, but at the same time we observed the livestock population increase.
Residents of an apartment block in Shymkent afraid they can become victims of a building collapse similar to the one in Karaganda. The construction is covered with enormous cracks and their foundation seems to be unstable. Tenants put the blame on the construction works nearby.
For nearly 6 years, residents of this apartment block have been living like they're next to a sleeping volcano. The crack in the walls are so big that an adult can easily place his arm inside. The staircase and entrance halls are literally displaced from their initial locations. The entrance hall is practically split open, just look at it. One can see people walking in the street. What on earth is this? How long can it last? I want to show you the inside of apartments with gaps in the walls, but the owners are not in. This whole wall keeps cracking further open. This entrance hall is moving aside. Over 100 people live in this building, afraid that at any moment their house may collapse like a house of cards. The cracks are only a part of the trouble. The utility piping keeps bursting all the time. The residents remember that all these troubles started with the roadworks nearby. The heavy road maintenance equipment, when operating, made the whole building shake like a leaf. We started to worry and appealing to every possible authority, including National Democratic Party, emergency department, city and regional administrations. We went everywhere. We asked all of them for help. They only keep promising. There's no help so far. Block residents say that there has not been any major repairs from the time the building was constructed over 40 years ago. Endless appeals to every official have not been entirely in vain. The appeals of the residents were answered. The building has been deemed subject to repair and restoration. However, without a permit from the Architecture and Construction Committee, the contractor company cannot start the work. We submitted the documents on April 6. If the Architecture and Construction Committee will approve it, we'll obtain a permit from the Community Service Center and commence the work. We're going to replace the entire utility network that are located in the basement. Then we'll reinforce the foundations with ferro-concrete structures developed by our designers. According to the contractor's estimations, the structural reinforcement and major refurbishment will last over 4 months. The residents would have to look for a place to stay during all this time.
National flag was used to collect rubbish in Atirau. The incident took place next to the building of the Transportation Prosecution Office and is already the subject of a police investigation. Prosecutors themselves claim they have not seen anything and people on the photo are not employed by the organization.
The pictures, however, show workers cleaning the territory next to the prosecutor's office building and placing rubbish into the flag. The footage was taken by a passing woman who turned the photo evidence to media. Now the politically incorrect street sweepers are in search by police. A criminal case is instigated in accordance with the Article 317, state flag abuse and state insignia abuse, punishable by fines or sentence of up to 1 year in prison.
Kazakhstan's athletes will have to take a test to prove their knowledge of the state anthem, said on Tuesday Sports Minister Talgat Yermagiayev. The decision was made after several incidents when the real anthem was replaced during competitions.
Another item has been added to the list of the tests Kazakhstan athletes have to pass before competing. Physical education and doping control are no longer enough. Now they have to prove they know the words of the national anthem. I understand that it may be difficult to learn Kazakh, but I believe 2 verses can be managed. This objective was set for the entire national team, which will represent our country at various world championships and the Olympics. The athletes must know the anthem. We will test them about a month before the competition. The decision was made in the aftermath of the March scandal involving Maria Dmitrienko. During the awarding ceremony in Kuwait, a soundtrack from the comedy Borat was mistakenly played instead of the anthem. Maria kept listening to it without even taking her hand off her heart. Later, her coach explained that the athlete was overstressed and didn't understand the words. In order to avoid similar confusion at the upcoming London Olympics, the sports authorities came up with a special set of instructions. In case athletes don't recognize the music played, they should not place their hand on their heart or leave the ceremony, but they should immediately submit a complaint to the coaches and stop the anthem. According to Yermegieva, $14 million has been allocated for the Olympic training sessions. This money allowed to improve conditions for 74 athletes who already received licenses. They are provided only with organic food, while a well-known local designer, Kuralay Nurkadilova, has created the national team uniform for the opening ceremony. Still, the sports agency has requested almost an extra $1 million for additional equipment, uniforms for the fans, accommodation for the national team and bonuses for the winners. $250,000 will be paid as a bonus for Olympic gold, $150,000 for silver, $75,000 for bronze. 4th, 5th and 6th places are worth $30,000, $10,000 and $5,000 respectively. In London, the national team will traditionally focus on weightlifting, wrestling and boxing. By July 27, the start of the Olympics, there should be no less than 100 participants from Kazakhstan. The ultimate goal to win 3 gold medals, 1 more than in Beijing. Overall, officials believe the national team is capable of bringing home 13 medals. In the meantime, Talgat Yermegieva has personally asked the authorities to help possible future champions solve all their everyday issues.
5 sportsmen from Western Kazakhstan have already won Olympic licenses. They will represent the country in freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling, rowing and athletics. And finally, 130 recruits have joined Kazakhstan's army on Tuesday. At the same time, the defense ministry claims there are so many recruits, so some of them had to be turned away.
About 1,500 draftees gathered around the Otan Ana monument in Astana, a major part of whom are the high school and college students. The military command representatives say there are plenty of young people wishing to serve in the army, to the point when some of them are even rejected by the recruitment commission. In response to the question about the ever-topical hazing issue, the military official stated it had been eliminated in Kazakhstan's army altogether. They also denied the rumors about imams being part of the recruitment commission testing the draftees for any possible religious deviation, adding that at least in Astana they heard nothing of that kind. When our staff members examine recruits, the first thing we instruct them about is the Kazakhstan's law and religion. Everything is clearly stated there. We have no problems with that in our department here in Astana.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching and goodbye.